Hey guys, this is Grandmaster Anurag Mamal and once again welcome to a new video on our channel, The Goan Chess Trio. Today we shall be having a closer look at another interesting game played out at the Gibraltar Masters 2020, and this is a round 6 game between the Indian prodigy Grandmaster Praggnanandhaa and former world champion Vasily Topalov. Now Topalov is one of the few elite players in the world to have broken into this magical 2800 plus ELO figure. Let's just jump straight into the analysis of the game. Pragnanda opened up with e4 and Topalov played e6. Now, Topalov does not really play much of French, at least not in recent times. Hence, it'll be interesting to see how he continued further. Pragnanda started with d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6, e5, nothing unusual so far, knight of d7, f4, c5, knight f3, and here Topalov started with bishop e7. Now, generally, knight c6 is played more often, which is the main line. It is definitely played way more often than bishop e7. But bishop e7 is also a solid move. It has an important idea which could be used, that is playing b6 and further continuing with bishop a6, which should get rid of this annoying French bishop. And it could be certainly useful somewhere in this position later. The game continued with bishop e3, which was met with b6, queen d2, and black played knight c6. White continued with bishop e2. Now, bishop d3 is a more natural square for this bishop, but this is unfortunately met with c4, bishop e2, and then followed with b5. Now, the problem here is if white picks up the pawn on b5, this is met with rook b8, and if white moves the knight, the b2 pawn is simply picked up with rook into b2, and this is a fairly good trade-off. Similarly, if white defends with a4, once again black plays a6, making the knight move, and rook into b2, and black picks up the b2 pawn. This is a fairly good trade-off because then black gets more room for his pieces and definitely gets an initiative going. Thus Praggnanandhaa started, let's go back, Praggnanandhaa started with bishop e2, and this completely kills off the possibility of black playing c4. So black went with castle, white also castled, and black played c into d4, simplifying some things in the center, knight into d4, knight into d4, bishop into d4, and black went with knight b8. Now bishop b7 is definitely the more natural developing move here, but the problem is this bishop does not really have any scope for improvement once it comes to b7. It is blocked by its own pawn, which is the pawn on d5, and thus it will not be really useful here. Also, we have to consider that white will also be continuing with ideas of getting something like f5 going pretty soon. Let's say once he gets his pieces aligned with rook d1, queen e3, maybe a few more improvements with his pieces, and then he will soon be getting f5 on the board, and that will be a big problem for black. Thus, we can see that Topalov chose this move knight b8, which temporarily prevents the move f5 and also opens up the possibility of once again playing bishop a6, getting rid of his annoying bishop on c8, the French annoying bishop, as we have already heard earlier. Bishop f2. Now this shows very good prophylaxis from Praggnanandhaa. Knight b8 is also heading to c6, which could target this knight on bishop on d4. Hence white moves the bishop back by itself because he's maybe also getting ready to play something like f5, but is also opening up other possibilities like maybe getting his knight to b5 and improving to d4, which should be a good square for the knight. Black played this move, bishop a6. Now definitely Topalov wants to get rid of his bad bishop. White took on b6, knight into a6, and we can see the actual benefit of playing bishop f2. White immediately gets f5. Now before we go into the variation which Topalov continued with was e into f5 in the game, let's look at what Topalov could have been done better. Bishop g5 is a possibility here. Let's say white plays queen e2, black could go with something like knight c7, and black is definitely not entirely worse here. He's definitely not fighting for an advantage. It is white who is still looking for an advantage, but he's significantly white is not significantly better here than black either. And one more variation let's look at is an interesting variation that we can play out is if white plays bishop e3, bishop into e3, queen into e3, black gets this fork d4, white still continues with this idea queen g3, d into c3, and plays out f6. Now f6 generates an immediate mating attack on g7, and the only way that black can prevent this is by playing g6 himself, and white gets queen g5. Let's go back. Now this was just an interesting variation, although white would not probably have played this in the game. Knight c7 by itself also would have been quite okay, because white could go with something like let's say rook a d1, and black could just hold together by, let's say, moving something like king h8, and it would be quite okay for black once again. But the choice that Topalov made in the game with e into f5 is actually quite dubious. We will see what happens further, but giving the d5 pawn early in the game was definitely not a good idea here. Black continued with knight b4, temporarily exploiting this pin, and white further consolidated his knight on d5 by playing c4. Black played rook c8, attacking c4, and white actively defended this idea by playing a3. Now he's targeting the b4 knight and trying to make black play knight into d5, which would give him excellent pawns with c into d5. Now these pawns are placed very nicely, and they're going to restrict black on space, and once d6 comes on the board, it's going to cause some major problems for black pretty soon. Let's just go one more back and see what happens if white plays knight into e7. Now this would be a bad idea here in this position, because white's knight is definitely better than black's bishop, at least at the moment in this position. So knight into e7, giving away the central knight and allowing black to maybe get rook d8 pretty much immediately wouldn't definitely be a good idea here. So hence white played a3. Black definitely did not take on d5, since c into d5 would be totally detrimental to his position. So black played knight c6, and white played rook fe1. Black matched this with bishop c5, and once again white played b4. Now we have to also see that bishop into c5 here would definitely not be a good idea, because b into c5 would allow black to get knight d4 immediately, and that would be a good nice outpost for his knight, and a little bit of a problem for us. So b4 does not really give that, and after queen takes f2, white has also attacked this f5 pawn, and if we go a little bit deeper, we'll be able to see that this defending the f5 pawn is not as easy. A simple, like, black played queen d7 in the game, but a simple move like g6 would be totally detrimental, because knight f6 would be a very strong outpost, and black's position would pretty much soon start falling apart. Black played queen d7, white continued with queen h4. Now this is an interesting choice here by Praggnanandhaa, because rook at d1 definitely is the more natural choice, as we can see, but after queen e6, white doesn't have something coming immediately. Let's say knight f4, the queen can easily retreat back, and suppose we try something like queen h4, and this has a nice hidden idea. Knight f6 check is one of the main ideas here, because gf6 in ef6, and there will be some dangerous mating attacks soon following on the king. Let's say so black could definitely play something like king h8 and take care of all of this, and black is doing considerably okay. Let's say knight f4 would be met with queen e7, and black is doing quite okay here. Hence, Praggnanandhaa started with queen h4, and this opens up the possibilities, the multitude of possibilities possible with knight f6. Also the possibilities with rook e3 followed by rook h3 or rook g3, creating some dangerous mating attacks and ideas here on the king. And one hidden idea is also that white could play this move b5. Let's say black gets overly casual and just plays something like h6. It could be met with b5, and the knight moves, and simply met with knight e7, picking up the exchange. This is also another idea in this position. Hence, a multitude of ideas, queen h4, black played queen d8, trying to take care and trying to exchange the queens, and Praggnanandhaa came up with a brilliant solution. I would like you to pause the video and try to see if you could tell me what Praggnanandhaa must have continued with here. Well, if you did look at knight f6, you're indeed doing quite well, because this is exactly the move that Praggnanandhaa played in the game. gf6 is pretty much forced, and this was met with rook a d1, and this is the brilliance that Praggnanandhaa is exhibiting over and over again. E into f6 would be a terrible mistake here, because this would be met with queen d4, queen into d4, and knight into d4, and that would just end up with white being a simple piece down here. And an intermediate move like rook a d1 takes care of that important possibility of the queen coming to d4, and once the queen moves away, let's say the queen could go to something like c7, this could be met with e into f6. Now the immediate threat is queen g5 delivering a mate on g7, hence let's say black and black will take care of it with king h8. This would be met with rook d3. Black cannot really stop this possibility of rook h3 and it like a strong mate happening on h7, and this is pretty much unstoppable here. Same goes for the move queen e7. This would come even faster because there's a direct attack on the queen, and once the queen moves somewhere away, queen g5 would deliver an immediate mate on g7. Now Topalov has realized that his position is eventually collapsing, so he went for something like knight e5, which gives away the queen and tries to hold with rook and knight against the queen. Now this definitely wouldn't work because the position is completely falling apart considering this weak pawns that we have here, and the material also is completely imbalanced, and this is definitely going to help the queen here. White just picked up the queen, rook takes d8, queen takes f6, and black played knight g6. And here again Praggnanandhaa showed his level of precision because he did not go for something as simple as defending the pawn on c4 and then trying to pick up the f5 pawn, but rather this young lad went for h4 and directly going with the idea of h5 and challenging the knight and going with h6 with some dangerous mating ideas falling up on h6. Now there is no good defense for this h5 idea, and the only way that Topalov could have taken care of it was with h5 himself. And after h5, once again, instead of going for something simple like just capturing the pawn on f5, rook into c4, queen into h5, rook into h4, and then just moving the queen away, this would also be winning, but isn't as clear as what Praggnanandhaa did in the game. This young lad just keeps impressing us, and he played rook f1. Now rook f1 is a very strong move because we realize that black still cannot capture on c4 because his rook on d8 is hanging, and the only way that he can defend the f5 pawn is by playing something like f4. And once again, now this is the final blow in this position. I want you to pause this video and try to see if you could find out what Praggnanandhaa did next. Well, Praggnanandhaa continued with this move, brilliant move g4, and it's okay if you did not find it because it took me also a while to get a hang of this move, because g4 is an extremely brilliant move. Let's say black goes for f into g3, it would be simply met with queen into f7 and further picking up the knight on g6. H into g4 would be met with h5, and the dangerous attack with h6 and queen g7 mate will soon follow. And in the game, Topalov continued with rook d3, trying to go for some counterplay, but this wouldn't really work out because after g takes h5, rook g3 check, king f2, Topalov gave up his knight on h4, white just picked up this knight, Topalov played rook into c4, and white played rook e1 with some further mating ideas with rook e8, maybe followed by queen d8, and Topalov had enough and resigned in this position. Well, if you found this video helpful, please like this video. Mention in the comment section if you have any ideas for us, and subscribe to our channel to keep up with more of the instructional videos that we will be soon coming up with. Until then, see you. Have a nice day.